Hello and welcome to Tech for Non-Techies, the only podcast that demystifies the fast-growing technology sector. I'm your host, Sophia Matveeva, Chicago Brief MBA and tech entrepreneur. My aim here is to give you the skills, knowledge and confidence to find opportunities in the tech sector, whether that's through founding a company, getting a dream job, or bringing a fresh perspective to your work.
Hello, smart people. How are you today? I have a slightly aching shoulder because I've been playing a lot of tennis lately. And honestly, I'm not a great player, putting it mildly, but what I lack in skill, I make up for in enthusiasm and hot pants. I found this tennis club near me in the south of France, which is on a slight hill overlooking the Mediterranean Sea, and it's so beautiful that I actually get distracted. And I play with this charming French coach called Fabien. And he literally has the patience of a very tan saint. And I've noticed that when we play, when I'm looking at where I want the tennis ball to go, it generally goes there, or at least it gets close. But when I'm stressing about just hitting the ball in the first place and basically using my tennis racket more like a self-defense tool as opposed to a tool for an elegant, beautiful game, that's when balls go flying everywhere and get stuck in pine trees, and it's very embarrassing. So, just being reactive to whatever is thrown at you does not get you the results that you want. If you're not focusing on where you want to go, you're not going to get there, as in tennis, also in life, and also in building a tech product. And this actually brings me to what you'll hear about today. There is a segue, just stay with me. Today, you'll be hearing from Ariana Waller. Ariana is a developer who specializes in working with non-technical founders. Me and Ariana met on Twitter, and then I went onto her podcast, the Women in Tech podcast with Ariana. And when we were speaking, I realized that we are literally on two sides of the same coin. We are both aiming to bridge the digital divide, but just from different sides. And you'd think that as a developer, Ariana would just be focusing on technology and on writing code. But actually, as you will hear in this podcast, Ariana won't work with founders who do not have a clear idea of who their users are and who don't have a clear vision of what they want to build and why. She doesn't need non-technical founders to know how to build the product because that's her job, but she wants to understand why you want the product to exist and what the business model is behind it. Ariana came to speak to our members a few months ago, and I wanted to share excerpts of our masterclass with you because I think it shows you how good developers think. So you can differentiate between people who are actually going to help you get your vision come to life and those who literally just want to take your money. Unfortunately, I have seen that happen quite a lot, but if you listen to this episode, you are not going to fall into this trap. So listen up and let's learn from Ariana.
I started and did a coding boot camp, which is where I got my hands-on experience of like coding, a back-end coding boot camp. And from there, I started two tech startups. So I've been in the cannabis space, also the beauty tech space. And then to fast track today, and I'm sure we can like go into those things if you want to. I'm just trying to give like a high level. So after those two startups, I am now working as a full stack engineer for my tech firm where we help non-technical founders develop tech solutions. So to give an example, like with code, since COVID happened within the last year, I've consulted like 70 plus like non-technical and technical founders, helping them develop their tech solutions, whether we're building custom solutions. We also use no-code platforms as well. So I can kind of talk to both of those areas and how to bridge those two things, because people talk about like tech solutions and no-code as if like they're separate. And I mean, they are in a sense, but their worlds are so much better when they come together. But yeah, that's what I do kind of full time now. Is I'm a full stack engineer and just support other folks around the world really with their ideas and getting it launched. So
how exciting. And so when non-technical founders come to you, usually what kind of request do they make? Because the reason I'm asking this is I found that there's a big spectrum, because people who literally they've had an idea, but they haven't yet gone through, something like Tech Non-Techies, or they haven't gone through the lean startup. They come with this really big idea, but they don't know how to explain it. And they definitely haven't thought of an MVP. They definitely haven't thought of a target user. And they are not ready to speak to developers. They need to do a lot of thinking time and user research time. And then there are the non-technical founders who've done all of this stuff. And then they're like, okay, I know the features that I need to build in order to test my assumptions, but I just don't know how to build them myself. So which ones do you get, or do you get all of them?
Yes. So I definitely get them all. I would say most of the time I'll get the non-technical founder who is super early stage, and they have, like you said, the idea, like, I need an app. And even it's interesting because even I have some technical founders too that come, but we'll just focus for the context of this conversation on non-technical, who they're like, I need the app, that does this and has the AI. And I'm like, well, really, you can do all of this like on WordPress with a little bit of code and some PHP and you're good. So I kind of get a different variety of founders. But one thing that I've always, and whether you're technical or not too, I just want to make sure that this point is clear. I think it is so important to really focus on that early, making that MVP good until you get to the point where your Google Sheets or your Bubble. I know a lot of people use like Bubble and Webflow. Until Webflow sends you that email that says you have used the maximum capacity of data, like use those no-code solutions to the fullest before you even go hire a developer. Like it's gotten to the point now, like when people come to me and they're pitching ideas because they want me or some of the folks that I hire to develop solutions for them. Like if you can't clearly communicate to me your customer and how you're going to scale that product, to me, it's like a waste of time. So I'm a little bit different in how my firm works. So I look at not just like, okay, here's an idea, they have money to give me, but I also look at as well the business model because I have a lot of experience in that. And when I like to help and invest in founders with building their tech solutions, I like to make sure no, this makes sense, like this can actually work, because it just goes better that way for the vibe. And because there's a lot of ups and downs when it comes to building solutions and software. It's like I look at clients as like every time there's a new client, that's like it's like an intimate relationship. It's like a marriage, really, right? So if I'm helping you develop your baby, which is your business, we kind of become like a family in a way, right? So I'm very careful at that. But yeah, I think it's important for founders, non-technical or technical, to focus on that MVP stage. And then maybe phase 2, let's start talking about how you can hire some real devs to join your team and get into the CTO phase.
I think this is really interesting because I think for anybody who is listening, who is thinking, who is kind of feeling a bit trigger happy, like I've got this idea, so I need to hire developers. And I see this all the time. I've got this idea and it's going to be an app. And I always say, well, it might be an app, but actually, can you tell me what the problem is and who you're solving it for? Yeah. And the development teams who won't ask you that are the ones that are essentially like, oh, they've got money, we need money, let's just go and do this. Exactly. And they will build you code, but it will be code for a product that is not usable, or a product that's going to be pretty rubbish because you don't know what problem that product is solving for. So it's basically just going to be code. Yes, and exactly. So this is why I think it's really good advice for founders, technical or non-technical, to be aware of people who actually don't probe them, almost like your investors.
Absolutely. I love that we're getting into this topic, because one of the things that happens, like when non-technical founders like reach out to me, it's because they had this horrible dev experience where someone, like I had a founder this week in Miami, so I'm in Miami for the month, and I had a founder tell me about a dev that he hired, and it's remote, right? So he's in Miami. I can't remember where the dev was based out of. And this whole time for the past couple months, the dev, like they had meetings and stuff. And the founder, he's a non-technical founder, hired this dev. He thought that the app was going to be ready to ship in 3 months. Come to find out, the guy didn't have basically any code at all, and was like, I guess, making some designs or whatever, using whatever platform and just kind of showing it off, acting as if he built something. And he never did. And because of that, he missed out on a major opportunity to get investment from a local like funding firm here in Miami. But when you're hiring devs, like, the most important thing is to make sure that they can clearly communicate to you, to the point, like, if you have a dev, like, it doesn't matter like how good a code they are or how often they're on GitHub and you can see all their green and they're active and stuff. They need to be able to include you in the process. So one of the things why people love working with me is because I'm constantly sending updates or explaining stuff to them that maybe they don't 100% fully know, but there's a constant communication. There are a lot of experiences that a lot of my clients who are non-technical co-founders, they hire these folks who, they just kind of go code silent, and, they're not updating them on what's going on in the project. And I just say, number one, communication is key. If they cannot communicate with you, and I know that sounds like so cliche, but it's so easy to look at someone's portfolio and say they built these things, and maybe they were like cool side projects, but it's different when you're working with someone who's supposed to be your CTO on a day-to-day or weekly basis. Completely different.
Interesting. And I really want to go back to that point of CTO versus kind of hired hand, because I do think that there is a distinction between somebody who is literally just going to come in and just essentially do what you tell them, and then they are not really particularly invested in what you're doing.
Right.
And there is this assumption that the only way you can overcome that problem is if this person has equity and if they become your co-founder and they become essentially officially part of your team. My experience hasn't been that. So I've actually had people who've had equity in my first company who weren't particularly engaged, because, there's like, if somebody's just not going to be engaged, like it doesn't matter what you give them. But also I've worked with an outsourced development firm that was really, really engaged, and they didn't have equity in it. So I do think that it's definitely possible. And I think that the way you can spot the difference of whether the company wants to do a good job and kind of who these people are is whether they essentially interview you before they take you on. If they interview you as if they are an investor, because essentially what I find that the difference is that good product development companies or good development shops, they don't want to work with a stream of clients that are going to be a bunch of failures. Because what they want to say when they're pitching to a new client is, these are the startups I've worked with, and these startups have gone on to raise money, be sold, have these clients, scale globally. And if you can't say any of that, I mean, you probably can't say that right at the beginning, if you're an early dev firm. But if you're just taking people's money and not actually thinking about it as an investor, then you're unlikely to get to that level.
Absolutely.
Do you find, so when a non-technical founder comes to you and they haven't really thought about the use case, they haven't thought about the MVP, they just think, I want to build an app. Oh, you're a developer. Okay, save me. What do you say to that person?
I'm going to be transparent. For a lot of us, as devs and people with CTO experience, we won't tell you this because we're like, oh, we want to work with you and stuff. But it's very important when you're approaching someone who you want to potentially do business with to really do your research. Like, don't just come with the idea. Like, it's okay if you're not technical and know everything that needs to happen on the back end or even on the front end, but really try to come with some substance for, not just the idea in general and the general business model, but be able to clearly communicate about what you feel like the different levels of phases are. That's one of the best things you could do to a dev or a potential CTO. Come and say, hey, I have this app idea to build an app for real estate agents. Okay, well, what does that look like to you building out this project for the next year, right? What if you don't have a budget? What does equity look like if you have an idea about that? It's important because it kind of helps us to, when you come with more upfront, it kind of helps us to, be able to understand whether or not this is a project we want to work on, especially if they're a good dev. They're getting pitches all the time. Like I'm getting pitched to all the time. So now I'm at the point where I can like cherry pick, like, okay, which are the ones? So if you want the devs who are really good and have good experience, and especially the ones that clearly communicate well, they communicate well and they have a lot of experience because other people want to work with them too. So like, you got to make sure that you're coming with your bag, like, and not just the money bag, right? But with good research and truly understanding your customer. Like, I think, I know that sounds crazy, but we have to realize if you don't truly understand your customer, how will the dev be able to design features and develop a fully functional app that works right for your customer? So yeah, all those things are important. You got to please come prepared. Please come prepared.
Wasn't that so useful? We just covered some key mistakes that non-technical founders tend to make, and they can be expensive, as we heard from that Miami example. I don't want that for you. I'm sure you don't want that for yourself either. Or for the investors in the audience, I know you're thinking, I really don't want the founders that I'm investing in to make those mistakes. So my question for you is, wouldn't it be better to be prepared so you could work successfully with people like Ariana and get the results that you actually can use? And that's what we're going to cover in the Tech for Non-Technical Founders course, which is going live next week. Enrollment for the Tech for Non-Technical Founders course closes on Sunday, and we start our 8-week course on Monday. So if you're listening to this on the day that it comes out, you literally have 5 days to register, so I wouldn't dilly-dally. If you have any questions about the course or how it's all going to work, if you're in my email list, just shoot me an email, so literally just respond, or go to Tech for Non-Techies on Instagram, or just find me on Twitter. All of those links are in the show notes. The course is amazing. You're going to get so much out of it. And I'm genuinely excited about our new cohort. We've already had some really smart, very interesting people join, and I'm really excited to work with them. So on that note, my dear Smarties, I'm going to wish you a fabulous day, and I will speak to you next week. Ciao.